This final 30th caprice, the chaconne, is one that I call Pictures at an Exhibition. Imagine yourself at a museum and beginning your journey into an artist's visual world. We start with an introduction of the artist and see some of his or her early works, traveling onward through the museum, seeing the artist's evolution in their life. In this caprice, we are challenged with all of the aspects of the previous caprices, and you should bring as much passion as possible to this final movement. By definition, a chaconne is a musical composition consisting of variations on a fixed bass line, continually repeating. This uses a figure called a ground bass, and Karg-Elert clearly states this bass line in the opening 4 measures. Play these 4 notes fully, with clear vibrato in the middle of the tone. Choose a tempo that is stable for the rest of the work. Treat the first variation with as much care to your sound as you gave in the opening 4 measures. Pretend your airstream is a violin bow and use the long and constant pressure. Make sure to bring out the basso ostinato. Breathe after the last note of this variation, showing that it is evolving from the basso ostinato's downbeat emphasis. Choose breaths that showcase the phrases, not your breath capacity. The variations begin to mirror the previous caprices, and you should be able to play in the styles that you have learned over the course of this study. Bring out the inner voices, articulations, and sudden dynamic changes. By variation 10, we find an example of Karg-Elert's writing for organ, this time showcasing the basso ostinato in D minor and using flourishing cadenza-like passages to arrive back to the successive bass notes. Group these little notes so that you can hear the harmonic progression of the variation. This leads directly into the fury of variation 11. In these octave passages, make sure you bring out the bottom note, and the top note will come out with ease. Continue through variation 13 in a steady tempo, feeling it in a strong 3-beat. In the first measure of variation 13, the 8th note in the measure is a G natural. At the end of variation 13, make sure to take the allargando very broadly. This will set up the grand arrival of variation 14, which he labels sonoro, or sonorous. Use a broad airstream, as wide as the embouchure hole itself, to create this wonderful color. Run through the sweeping scales and bring out the confident bass line. When we reach the end of this variation, we have left the solid foundation of tonality and venture into the final outpouring of chromaticism in this grand movement. Make sure to bring out the ascending chromatic line combined with the descending minor third. Don't feel like you have to rush and stay in tempo. This is a very tricky section, and if you play it a little slower and cleanly, it will sound better. Make a diminuendo in the second measure of variation 15 to set up the following 2 measures that lead directly into variation 16. This variation is difficult to play cleanly, and I suggest taking time between the dynamic changes. The passages marked pianissimo seem to serve as musical comments on what was just played in fortissimo immediately before it. Grow in the tension and speed of the airstream at the end of this variation. Variation 17 should be played with wild abandon. He asks the performer to throw caution to the wind and perform ad libitum, giving the option to play the written notes or a chromatic flourish from where you see 1 star and end at 2 stars. Don't try to keep a strict tempo. Karg-Elert wants us to linger and make the following downbeat even heavier than the one before. When you reach the final E trill 5 measures from the end, breathe after it to make sure that you can reset your embouchure for the next low F. This final coda is a brilliant finish in F minor. Breathe after each of the 8th notes so that the 32nd notes can be cleanly played and lead directly into the next 2 8th notes. If you don't need a breath, save as much air as possible to ensure a brilliant finish to this final caprice. There is a crescendo on the final note. Think of it as exhaling outward and upward. The last rest should be observed, so please add enough vibrato and don't hold the final note too long. We have taken an exhilarating and exciting journey in this 30th caprice. It is a piece that is often required in competitions. Bring as much passion and energy to it as possible.